how to combat ageism in your next interview. The topics that we want to cover to uncover exactly how you can do that successfully. We'll talk about tips to update your interview skills, particularly if it's been a little bit of time since you've interviewed. We'll talk about how to address being overqualified. We know that's a common concern of people who are looking for work and have been in the workforce for a while. We will talk about how you can discuss your career goals as an older worker, and also we'll talk about the importance of confidence. And then, as I mentioned, we will go into the audience Q&A. So let's update our interview skills. How do we do that? Well, there are some key skills that you can take, or steps really, to start getting ready. So you want to know the different types of interviews that are out there, and sneak peek or a secret, we're going to go over those next. You also will want to familiarize yourself with the commonly asked questions during interviews. If you don't know what behavioral interviewing is, we'll talk briefly about that so that you can then take it from there and go and kind of practice some of the strategies for behavioral interviewing. And then, of course, as I mentioned, practice is important, but also mock interviews is one way to get in that really solid practice. As I mentioned, we're going to talk about the types of interviews, and I just want to review these. As I said, especially if it's been a while since you've interviewed for a job, you don't need to worry about this. We can go through it, and you can find lots of information to help you prepare for a specific type of interview. And knowing what type of interviews are out there, and then once you set up an interview, the company will tell you what type of interview it is. It's really going to help guide your preparation process. You may have an in-person interview if you're looking for or interviewing for an in-person or hybrid job. And before remote work was so prevalent, many of us had that experience of having an in-person interview. There are also now one-way video interviews, which is also pretty common. This involves you answering questions that either your computer speaks to you, or the questions are typed up on the screen and they appear, and then you record your answers, and then the interview is sent to the hiring team at the company. An AI interview can be pretty similar to a one-way video interview, and I'm going to talk specifically about that in the next slide. So hang tight on that. Video interviews are just what they are, videos. You are going to use a specific tech platform. It varies across companies, but this would be interactive between people maybe on a platform like Zoom or Microsoft Teams. Of course, there are others. You also might encounter a phone interview or a phone screen, and finally, a panel interview. This type of interview involves you and more than one interviewer from the company. Now, all of these are different types of interviews, and I do want to point out that many job interviews today have at least 2 rounds of interviews, and many have more, might have 3 or 4. So that is something that you'll want to consider or think about. You'll have preparation ahead of each different round of interviews, but for a multi-round interview process, usually you have a screening interview, probably phone or a quick Microsoft Teams with a recruiter, and then you might have an interview with a hiring manager, and then you might have a panel interview with the team, and then the decisions will be made. Okay. So let's go back to the AI interview, because I do think that these are becoming more and more common as AI expands into everything that we're doing. This is a newer category of interviews because it is a newer technology. Now, an AI interview and a one-way video interview are similar in that both involve you recording video responses to preset questions, but they differ in how those responses are evaluated. For example, in a one-way video interview, you record your answers to interview questions at your convenience. There is no live interaction. After you submit your video, a person is going to review your responses and decide how to move forward with your candidacy. And evaluation is done by the people, allowing for nuanced understanding and potential flexibility. With an AI interview, the format is typically the same. You record answers to sets of questions or a set of questions on video. However, instead of or before a person looks at your video, the AI software is going to analyze your recorded responses. And they are going to look at things like the word choice, not they, the software is going to look at things like word choice, speech patterns, your voice tone, sometimes even facial expressions or minimally body language, because of course this is using a technology and it's going to depend on the algorithm of the software that they have. Now, the system typically will provide something like a score or a report to the hiring team at the company, who might then use the results to decide which people will move on to the next stage of interview. This can really speed up the initial screening of large applicant pools, which is why some companies are likely using this. So the short of this is a one-way video interview. The responses are going directly to, a person on the hiring team after you do that. In an AI interview, there is a level of software analysis that's involved, usually as a step between when you do the interview and before a recruiter reviews your answers or a hiring manager reviews your answers. Now, anticipating what an interviewer might ask you in an interview is going to help you with your preparation and practice. So I've put on the slide the most commonly asked questions in job interviews. Tell me about yourself, which of course is not really a question, but that's usually the first statement that's made in an interview. What is your greatest strength? What is your greatest weakness? Why do you want to work here? Why are you looking for a new role, and where do you see yourself in 5 years? Plus, there's also curveball questions. Now, the great news is we do have a webinar that addresses each of these questions, and so we're not going to go into great detail on all of them. I do want to talk specifically about one of the questions. I'm sure you can guess which one that is, but we have really great resources and another webinar specifically about storytelling and tell me about yourself. And then on our FlexJobs webinar, preparing for job interviews, we address the rest of the questions, including tell me about yourself. So there are lots of resources there, but you want to anticipate these questions or a similar form of them because they're going to be asked. So you have to think about how you want to answer. The part where people are often stumped is when they're thinking about where do I start? Because I have over 20 or 30 or whatever number of years of experience, how can I possibly answer this question in 1 minute or less? Well, the good news here is the job posting is going to be your key resource because you want to frame your answers around, of course, your experience, but relating it to the relevant information in the job description. So you're going to reread it, see which key skills the company is looking for in their applicant and their eventual hire, and then formulate your answers around those specific skills. Now, we always, during this webinar, get a question about how do you answer, where do you see yourself in 5 years? Companies like to know that you are forward thinking and have considered where you might be in the future. They also want to know that your goals really align with the company goals, which is why, again, research prior to an interview is important. As an older worker, they want to make sure that you'll be there for a while, that you're not just, going to be there for 6 months or whatever that might be. If this is your last role before you officially retire, that's fine. That is not how you want to focus on what you talk about when you answer this question. You want to bring it back to the job description. You want to let them know what you hope to accomplish and what you hope to be doing in 5 years as it relates to the company and the job. So for example, you might say something like, in 5 years, I hope to continue to share my expertise in order to inspire school-aged kids from all backgrounds to pursue an engineering career. Ideally, I want to learn and grow in this role and become a mentor to team members. As I mentioned previously, the company's culture and mission statement align closely with my values, and in 5 years, I'm hoping to be here contributing to company goals. So you're not really getting into details about when you want to be done working or anything like that. You're going to talk about contributing, mentorship opportunities, or anything else that aligns with you and your desires and the job that you are applying for. All right. Now, I mentioned behavioral interviewing and questions like tell me about a time when, or, describe a time when you had to do X, Y, or Z. These are like situational questions where the employer is trying to see what kind of behaviors you use in order to, um, uh, get through the work that's required for you. And so that is something that you want to use a framework called STAR, which stands for situation, task, action, and result. And so your answers to these questions are going to be pretty descriptive. An employer is going to want to understand you on a deeper level and some of the work that you did and what your results and actions were. So this is going to be something that's going to offer insight to them in how you work. Okay, so what if you're applying for and interviewing for a job where you are overqualified? So, bringing a lot of experience is not a bad thing. In fact, this is one of your strengths. However, if not all of your experience is required for the role that you are interviewing for, you want to make sure that the employer understands that you understand the role requirements. It's possible that the employer might be wondering, if this person has all this experience, how long are they really going to be here? Am I going to be able to afford them? Being able to share with them what your goals are and explain and illustrate why you are interested in working in this job at this company can help quell concerns like how long will you be here? What goals do you have? You want to show that you want what they offer. And you might say something like, I'm excited about this opportunity because it allows me to use my skill set to advance the goals of the customer. I've always worked to provide an exceptional customer experience, and I believe this role will allow me to thrive in delivering that spa-like service. I also am personally connected to your company's mission of, and then you can add it in, because on a personal level, I believe that you can add your belief. It's great to be here speaking with you, sharing my experiences, and learning even more about this opportunity. So, again, you're not focusing on the fact that you're overqualified. You're talking about the goals that you have, that you like what they are offering, and you're excited about the potential to work there. All right. So as we talk more, I've mentioned career goals a couple of times. And so what you want to do when you talk about future goals is focus on immediate impact and value. So emphasize things like your desire to leverage your experience and skills to make a strong and positive impact in the short term. Highlight specific ways you can contribute to the organization's goals, or as I mentioned earlier, mentor younger colleagues or help with the knowledge transfer from you to other people. You also want to be transparent and strategic. It's not necessary to say exactly how many years you plan to work unless you're directly asked. Instead, frame your goals around your commitment to the role and your enthusiasm for contributing during the time that you will be there. Now, if the topic arises, you can say you're looking for a role where you can add value and mentor others over the next several years, which signals both your intent and your reliability. And then you want to align yourself with the organization's goals by expressing interest in projects or responsibilities that match your expertise and their immediate priorities. You also would do well to mention your openness to flexible arrangements, project-based work, or part-time roles if that's appropriate. And finally, highlight your knowledge and mentorship Many employers value seasoned professionals for their ability to coach, train, and support team members who don't have as much experience and work through some of those harder situations and conflicts that arise throughout one's career. So if you can position yourself as someone who can help the organization, build strength and continuity, that's going to be desirable. Don't talk about your age. Instead, focus on your skills, how adaptable you are, how willing you are to learn, show that you have a growth mindset. Your language should convey energy, commitment, and of course, professionalism. A couple things that you might say, just some sample talking points, like I'm looking for a role where I can use my experience to help the team achieve its goals and support the development of others. You may say something like, my focus is on making a meaningful contribution over the next few years, especially in areas where my background can help the organization move forward quickly. And finally, another example, I'm excited about the opportunity to mentor and share best practices, ensuring a strong foundation for the team's future success. All right. Confidence is key if you want to soar in your interview. So, with any job interview, you need to go in confident. They already have seen something they like on your application and in your resume. They are intrigued and they want to learn more about you because they feel like you're already a good fit for the role. If you go into the interview with the mindset of they are going to see how old I am and think I'm not right, or of course they'll be able to tell how old I am, this can impact your confidence. You will be stuck in your head, and all of a sudden, all the really great things that you've practiced and you know you bring to the table might not come across because you are stuck and worried about something that is an issue to you. You don't know that it is an issue to the employer at all. So don't make it an issue. A positive attitude and positive mindset is the way to be. Sometimes this is easier said than done, as it does take a long time to find a job right now. The data out there suggests that a normal job search is taking 3 to 6 months. And beyond that, there is about a less than 10% chance that you will land an interview from each application you submit. So this is something that takes a lot of discipline and motivation. And I'm not telling you this to scare you, but it's to help manage your expectations. Not getting an interview or job offer can happen, will happen for many reasons, and thinking it is always because of your age is not going to serve you well. Finally, if you feel that you aren't confident in the technology that is being used for the interview, spend some time getting familiar with those platforms prior to. There are usually free trials or ways to go about it so that you can make some headway before going into it. Now, during the interview and as you prepare and practice your answers, be sure you are including the skills and keywords from the job posting that you also have. Skills like adaptability, problem solving, and communication are key in the way that we work today, hybrid and remote, and even in-person work. Exude enthusiasm and energy so the employer knows you are up for the role. Pepper in your excitement about the organization and through the interview. You can talk about your ability to collaborate and what interests you most about the organization as well. Now, after the interview, there are some things that you want to do. So if it's been a while since you've interviewed, keep in mind that before finishing with the interview, your last question should be something like, when can I expect to hear from you? Or when do you expect to make your decision? So you know what the next steps are and you know when you can follow up if you haven't heard back from them. Then you want to make sure you write a thank you note. Sending via email is A-OK, and do it within 24 hours of the interview. Now, because you're going to ask when you can expect to hear from somebody or when they're going to make their decision, that gives you the runway to know when you can follow up. So mark your calendar so you'll be able to follow up on that day. All right, so what do we do next? Here's what you're going to do. You're going to familiarize yourself with the types of interviews. You're going to write out and prepare star answers to behavioral interview questions. Test the technology, continue to practice, and finally be confident going in. All right. As a reminder, we'll be sending you a link to this recording. Check out the flexjobs.com blog or article section of the website so you can see thousands of resources available to you on any piece or part of your job search. And now, without anything else, let's go ahead and get to these questions. Hi, everybody. It's Tony. Here are the questions. Let's get through as many as we can. Let's see. What can we do to at least get a chance to interview? Well, we do have many resources and webinars on handling ageism in your job search. But of course, that's going to start with how you present yourself on your resume and in your LinkedIn profile. So you want to be sure, we can't hide our age. We were born when we were born. We look how we look, but what you can do is optimize your resume to market yourself with your most relevant skills and highest level accomplishments and results rather than focusing on your age, which means you don't list an objective statement on your resume. You don't have your physical address on your resume. No references available on request. Don't put your education date of graduation. 10 to 15 years of experience is all you really need on your resume. Those are some high level things that you can do through the application process to help you tailor and stand out your resume without giving away, the that you've worked for 40 years, particularly if the job that you are applying for only requires 5 or 10 years of experience. Let's see. Hello. What do we do when filling up an application where you need to type in the year of your graduation? Years ago, I could put 000 or 9999 or simply leave it blank. Nowadays, some websites require this and the dates cannot be older than 1940. How do we go about this? Yeah, usually we've had experts, ageism experts or people who are career coaches and work with people concerned about ageism have suggested 4 zeros or 4 nines. If that doesn't work, you can put the date that you were born. I mean, there's not really ways to get around it. If you're older than 1940, and it surprises me that there would be a limit to what years you could go back to. You may try to reach out to somebody at HR and let them know that you're trying to apply for the job if that is an issue. What is the best way to present yourself as someone with extensive work experience in a previous career and are now exploring a new career, but don't want them to regard you as an entry level candidate? This is going to be where you will focus on your transferable skills and those skills that are relevant to the roles that you are applying for. If you are applying to an entry level role, even with your experience, you'll have to do some research on what the salary averages might be or what the salary for that particular position might be. There may be a discrepancy in where you're leaving and where you're going just based on the new field. I mean, sometimes a different field that you might explore may not have the same salary range at all of the one that you are leaving. Um, if you're leaving being a doctor or a lawyer and you want to work in marketing and you're starting at an entry level, there would be some discrepancy probably there when you're starting. But that's going to be all about your entry or your transferable skills, how you use it on your application, and then through networking as well. Let's see, AI interviews. How can a software pick up on things that a human can? It may make the process quicker, but when employers start using this to choose the best candidate, humanity will lose no matter what age you are. Okay, that's not really a question, but AI interviews are kind of a thing, just like one-way video interviews. And, I think as the technology ages, it will get better, but employers seem to be embracing this resource for them to manage their hiring. Let's see. I recently interviewed for a technical program manager role, bringing over 15 years of experience to the table. Midway through the conversation, the interviewer, who appeared to be significantly younger, abruptly cut me off and asked, "Do you have any questions for me?" It was clear from his tone and timing that he had disengaged and was no longer interested in continuing the dialogue. The experience left me questioning whether my depth of experience was truly being valued. How do you come out of such experiences? This is tricky. It's possible that during that interview, the person who was interviewing you just sort of felt like it wasn't going to be a good fit, and that was their way to kind of wrap it up. Which isn't helpful if you're the job seeker, because it does shake your confidence a little bit. Certainly, your experience is valuable and valued to the right employer, and it sounds like that likely wasn't going to be a good fit. And particularly if that was an experience that you had in an interview, remember when you're interviewing, it's also your opportunity to interview the employer and to see and feel if that would be a good environment or place for you to work. And so, given that kind of experience, if it had happened to me, you kind of reflect on kind of how you presented yourself, what information you shared. Might you have done anything differently if you feel like how the conversation kind of ended that way, but also reflect on if this was such a quick change in tone or disengagement, would that be a place that I would really want to work going forward? And then sort of cross it off, you had that experience, move on. The good news is you were contacted, your resume is saying the right things for this type of work. And so hopefully there are other employers out there who are excited to chat with you as well. Are there specific jobs that employers actually prefer an older employee, i.e., project manager, marketing manager? Not necessarily, but there are some resources. You can go to the Age Friendly Institute. They have the acronym is CAFE, Certified Age Friendly Employers. And you can look at the list there of companies who have committed to hiring, the diverse workforce with employers who may be older, as well as AARP. So you can find company lists there, and FlexJobs has some resources on that as well. Is there a webinar on how to age proof the resume cover letter? Yes, we have a general webinar on how to combat ageism in your job search, where we do talk about best practices for resumes, cover letters, and such. And so we encourage you to check out our events to see when that is airing again. Let's see. How much does networking or LinkedIn contacts network help in finding the job? Well, the statement, it's not what you know, it's who you know, is still very relevant, particularly in the job search. So, networking should be a part of your job search. Um, Regardless of what age you are. There are jobs that are never really listed because people kind of happen into them based on conversations they have or networking they're doing, or somebody thinks of somebody that might be interested in the position, maybe more passive job seekers. And so you should always continue to build on the relationships that you have, even when you are gainfully employed, because it may not be your last job. And so having a LinkedIn profile, continually updating that profile, and also networking and reaching out to contacts that you have is incredibly helpful in this job search day and age. Let's see. Does the 10 to 15 years of experience rule also apply to the LinkedIn profile? You definitely have more space on your LinkedIn profile. I think if you have relevant experience, just like on your resume, if you have some relevant experience that's older, you can create a small section that says additional relevant experience, include that on your resume without your dates. On your LinkedIn profile, on mine, on many, that goes back more than 10 to 15 years. It's just shorter. You don't have to include as much information as, going back further. I don't necessarily think that you need to keep the experiences on there, particularly older ones where the technology you use or the job that you did isn't really relevant in today's day and age. If it's evolved so much that somebody who was quite a bit younger than you and hiring may not be very familiar with. And so you can kind of play around with that a little bit on LinkedIn. Um, at least the last 10 to 15 years, what you're sharing on your resume should match what you have on your LinkedIn profile. And then if you want to keep some other experience on there, you can do that. All right, everybody, that's our time for today. We do have a second webinar at the top of the hour on transferable skills. So maybe some of you will be able to join us there. Otherwise, you can look for the recap email to this shortly. And thank you for coming. Hopefully, this was helpful. Bye, all.